Hey everyone, welcome to wasmCloud Wednesday for Wednesday, January 29th. We have got a pretty sweet agenda for today, a couple of demo discussion items, and we got a bunch of people here from the community, so thank you all for being here. The first thing, I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right in, is a demo of something that came up on the open source side. Actually, Lucas is here. Lucas from Cosmonic filed this issue I was gonna say a couple weeks ago, but I guess it was last week, where when a provider fails, let's say you try to start a capability provider and it's provisioning resources on the machine, something like opening up a couple ports. If it's not able to open up that port, maybe that's a failure mode, right? And the provider exits. When the provider process fails, or if you just like kill dash nine it, the Wasm Cloud host that's actually running that provider currently doesn't do anything with it. It reports that this provider exits, and then, we basically are just sad about it until a higher level orchestrator like Wadum will basically have to tell Wasm Cloud to stop and start that provider again, which is not really like a hook that we have easily accessible. So we talked a little bit about how to implement this, but I think this was pretty fairly filed as a bug. And the reason being is I see the Wasm Cloud host evolving more and more in this direction of being like an agent. Like its job is to, and people have described it as a daemon before. The Wasm Cloud host, its job is to run components, run capability providers, and I think a part of that comes with it is continuing to keep them running. So this may sound really obvious, but I think that this is like a property that will continue to carry forward in our different things when we update the host. Um, I don't remember if I shared my whole screen, so sorry. Um, okay, so you all should have been able to see Arc though. I just I'm gonna or the browser window. Okay, great. So I did put up a PR a little bit earlier. Well, today was when I kind of finalized the implementation. But what this does is whenever a capability provider exits at runtime before the host has basically explicitly told it, hey, you should stop, we are going to repull the configuration and basically set up a whole new provider process and then execute it. So let me go ahead and show you it working. And then what we can do is we can start working or looking at the code if people are interested there. So commonly a way that I test things when I'm working locally is I use wash up to run nats and wadum. And then I will take a look at the host that wash started, and then I will stop it. So basically this, now I have nats and I have wadum, and this gives me the freedom to just do something like this. So I can run a Wasm Cloud host. This is from, working with Rust from my local, all my local changes and everything like that. So I have my host running now, but pretty much the same as wash up. I can go to the an example component. We can just do hello world to keep it nice and easy. And I don't think I have anything. Great. I can deploy this hello world component. So this deploys two different things. It's the component itself, so my nice little business logic, and then the HTTP capability provider that basically does the listening for HTTP and forwards that onto the component. So if I do a nice curl localhost 8000, I'll see hello from Rust. Great, basic example app. Now, previously, if I were to take a look at if I were to find the HTTP server process locally on disk and basically kill dash nine it, this would not be supervised by Wasm Cloud. You would see a nice little error message like, oh no, it exited. That stinks, but nothing would happen. But now, if you do this, you notice I can still curl. And this isn't just because there's something else running in the background. So let's take a look at some of the logs here, what happened. So I sent the kill dash nine to my provider. You can see we got a warning from the host. I put this at a warning level. It feels pretty apt to say like, hey, this is weird. but we're going to restart it. And saying, hey, it exited with wait status 9, so it was super killed. And then you can see that pretty much right away, the capability provider starts up again and then logs, hey, I set up this listener for the component. So basically what happens here is the capability provider, here we can actually look at the code. It's very fun. There's this new provider module which contains all this implementation. So when we execute the provider, we're basically left with this process child. This is just a handle to the process on the local system, so we could kill it or what have you at any time. Then we have a background task, one that's responsible for watching for configuration changes, but two, it just basically waits until the provider exits. And this task will just sit here, probably doing nothing for the whole life cycle of the provider in the normal case. As long as it's not actively shutting down, then we'll output that warning message saying, hey, we're going to restart that provider. And then we actually go back through the provider initialization process. So we fetch configuration, we fetch secrets. We actually use the exact same, some of the exact same information like the X key and the ID so that everything is kind of stable. We're just restarting it, but making sure that it has all the updated config when the provider starts. And then last but not least here, we will watch for new config changes and then execute the new, I love talking about this stuff. We'll execute the new child, the new process, which is the capability provider. And then this is actually a choice that I made. We could certainly use like an exponential back off mechanism here so that we, if we're running into a failure, then we don't like continue to do it over and over. Actually just opted for a pretty dumb sleep for 5 seconds, try again. This is something we could certainly talk about, but it felt like kind of a lot to just bring it in for this scenario. And really all we want to prevent is like hot loops where the provider is just restarting over and over. Actually, when I was researching, turns out the exponential backoff crate is written by Yash. So thank you, Yash, on the Bytecode Alliance slash Rust slash whatever side. Okay, so there's a couple other refactors that happened in this PR just to clean up some of the wasmCloud host code, but that is kind of the core of the feature. So do folks have any questions about how this may work? Does this line up with your expectation for a host, keeping a capability provider running or not? All this is yes, thank you, Bailey. Yash, on the WASI side, that is definitely worth saying. Yeah. Um, Questions, comments, concerns? Masood?
Hi, Brooks. Two questions. One is when we have resources that we register in the store, in the runtime, uh, that's that's one thing about the cleanup there. And the other one is that when a component used set link name or whatever that was to basically dynamically change the link. Now, when we're resetting the provider, the component, how does the component know that basically the link has changed?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the first one around, if the component registers resources or like is in the process of calling a capability provider when it's killed, unfortunately, there's not a ton that we can do on the provider side. When we tell it to shut down gracefully, we basically make the request. The provider can clean up its resources, but that's when it shuts down for like an operating system level kill like this. Um, this feature won't help that scenario, but it will make sure that the provider's there for the next invocation. Is that where you were going with the first question?
It was just about leftovers, right? And what impact they might have on later operations, right?
Yeah.
Imagine, let's say, key value. where we, or a secret, where we register that secret, or store a reference to it, a handle to it in the runtime. And then now it kind of remains there, right?
Actually, after each like invocation of a component, just like we'll clean up all of its existing memory and resources, sorry, memory like linear memory, we also clean up all of its resources because each individual instantiation of a component has its own set of resources. So we don't keep anything around between invocations.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. Great question. Your second question um, was around a component like calling set link name so that it can call a capability provider using a different set of config or using a different target for the same interface. Um, I think really it's the same scenario there. So if the component was in the process of executing and it reaches out to a provider that had panicked and exited, then it would need to handle the error there. But once the provider's restarted, as soon as you go back through your component logic to execute, you'll call set link name again. All of the same links and configuration will be present. The reason why during the restart process we need to go back and kind of reform that config and refetch secrets is that we don't really keep we do keep the updated configuration, but when the provider restarts, essentially the information that it had when it started has been updated slowly over time. The host has said, "Hey, you received a new link that you should go and configure. Your configuration got updated." So we're just kind of bringing the new provider up to speed with the one that just exited. Yeah, great questions. I think that this one probably, in the ideal case, this basically doesn't happen. Like it's uncommon. I don't believe any of our wasmCloud capability providers are designed in such a way to exit on a failure. Like if there was an issue with defining a link to open up a port or something, then the provider would report a failure, but not like exit the entire binary. So this probably won't come up too often, but it might be really useful when it comes to developing new capability providers. Now we actually also have some additional failure modes to play with, and that sounds like a fun way to put it, but I mean we could report the status of, hey, I couldn't execute for this. Maybe you should try something else. So this is just kind of an additional hook while keeping Wasm Cloud a little bit more resilient. Same way we kind of do with components. If a component panics during an invocation, we don't get rid of the whole thing. We just make sure everything is ready for a new invocation to come in. Alrighty. Well, this one should land. I guess it'll come out in Wasm Cloud 1.6, which we will be the next minor version of Wasm Cloud because it's a new feature. But like I said, you all probably won't even really notice this one. But it's a good thing to have for resiliency in the background.
Are you supposed to be sharing the screen?
No, I don't think so. Oh, just I like stopping the share so that everybody can see everybody's face. But I will share again, since we're at the end of that one. So we actually have another demo. Wow, for you today on data aggregation for benchmarking. So I think it was last week. Taylor came on and yes, talked about the Helm chart for doing benchmarks in Wasm Cloud. And this is kind of a continuing build up on that work. Taylor, would you like to oh my God, hold on.
He's waiting for the Liam share moment. Anyway, so uh I loved the like melodrama there. It's like the applause sign. Wow. Came on. I got Liam up. He's pulling the John Travolta, the looking around. Who, me? Just kidding, Liam. Much love. For those who are new to the call, that was a classic thing that happened all the time, like a while ago. Anyway, so let me go ahead and share. Okay, so this is just a continuation, like Rick said, what happened last week. We added a few extra features in that figured would be handy. So I already did the install steps, so we didn't have to, wait for that this time. So you can see what it is. So we have a new version that's cut. I just cut it this morning. It's 020 of the chart that's out. It still behaves all the same, but you'll notice a new text here. The most important thing being that now I put a little command in there to wait for the test to be complete based on what test it runs. Obviously, this is going to finish immediately because it's already ran a little while ago. And then what it also has is the ability to get the results from config maps. So what happens now is the test by default writes all of its summary results out as JSON into the config maps for it. So essentially what will happen is I actually think I might have forgotten. No, I didn't forget to clear. So if I do kubectl get CM, you'll see I actually have some from my previous tests, but you'll see that there's one for each of the tests that I ran right there. It's labeled so that each time you run it, if you run it multiple times and before you uninstall the release, it'll do it. But what it lets you do is there's this nice little command with JQ that lets you take these and print them out, and it aggregates them into an array, a JSON array of all the different results from K6. The reason I did it this way is people are going to want to do different things with these if they use this chart. They might want to slurp them up and store them in an S3 somewhere. They might want to put it there's whole bunches of things they could want to do. So the whole idea was just letting people be able to do whatever they want by putting these results out there. If you want an example doing it, there's an obviously slightly hacky, but does its job because it's a script, Python script, that lets you do this in the repo that aggregates all the results. We're going to be using this for a pipeline that will run against testing infrastructure once we have it from the CNCF to be able to run benchmarks and collect this data from it. But what we're able to do is, see if I can get the right dots up. Nope, too far. And then we do CI, and then we have aggregate data. So this thing will take the results from standard in and aggregate them all into a single JSON blob for you. So you have basically the counters put together, all the total requests per second, all those kind of things are all put into a single thing. So anyway, you can do whatever you want with the data. The whole point of showing this is that now this is just automatic. It puts the data in a place where you can consume it from, and then you're able to take that data and do whatever you want with it. So there you go. That's the new stuff. Any questions? Yes, Brooks.
Hey, Taylor. So I think you said the next step for this is we're looking for testing infrastructure from the CNCF, like a place to basically run this. What is so when we have that, what do you see as how are we integrating this into our repo? Is it we'll run a benchmark every certain time, or maybe every PR or release or whatever? How do people see? Will people see the results of this? I guess there's kind of a lot there, but
yeah, it's gonna go in stages. So Lucas demoed about a month and a half ago, an example of running these benchmarks, and these things are basically based off of that. And essentially what we're going to do is have a CI pipeline that's scheduled weekly. Justin was like, kube cron job. Well, we could do that, but we're going to have this inside of the wasmCloud pipelines. It'll go through, it'll either spin up the infrastructure or use a basically Kubernetes cluster that scales to 0 if we can get the control plane to be free. It'll spin up the infrastructure there and run a fairly large test. This is supposed to be running at production level, requests per second. Just to show what that looks like and what the things are. We'll tweak around with it and see what we can do. The thing is all this is infinitely configurable and improvable, but the MVP here is going to be getting the pipeline out having this pipeline run on a weekly or against specific branches that you can trigger as a maintainer. So maintainers can trigger it if we want to see like what the effect of something is. So when like some of the preview 3 stuff starts landing, we'll do that. And then you will take that, and my first thing is just going to be it's going to spit out the JSON in a step in the pipeline, and there you go. We can then start going from there and saying, okay, we're going to store this in a specific location and maintain historical graphs and all that kind of stuff. But even just having, the build results, that stay around will be, I think, good enough to start. And then we can, like I said, improve from there. It basically gets all this groundwork in for people to take on like good first issues of like, hey, we want to, store this somewhere, or we want to visualize this in a certain way. And then that gives some additional things that we can do as a community. But we're getting to that point. So that's the next step here. And that's why there's that new CI directory at the top level of the wasmCloud repos. Right now, it's just basically that script and then a Docker file for the K6 runner. That's what's new too, is we changed to our own custom builds. So we could do the Kubernetes things inside of it. But that's pretty standard practice in K6. So we have that, but then there'll be also basically like some of the other things that we might do around like the customize for applying the resources and spinning up wasmCloud and all that jazz. So that'll be the plan.
Awesome. I have a dumb question, which anyone else, please feel free to raise your hand and just cut me off as the question person. Why are we, so we have a lot of things in pipelines. Why are we looking for like special infrastructure for this benchmark test?
Because it's big and chunky. It's big. That's what this comes down to, is that we want to make sure we're running it against something that looks like production. So when we run it against Kubernetes, it'll like the reason we're using Kubernetes is we're using Kubernetes for what it's good at, spin up the infrastructure. So it's going to spin up the NAT, it's going to spin up the wasmCloud cluster. It'll have multiple hosts that are all part of the same lattice, and then it will schedule an application that's across all those. And like basically pin it to like one to a node and then hit it really hard. So like that's just to show like I'm still debating. We'll see what we get from the CNCF. I don't know if we'll do the same like 100,000 requests per second like we were doing. And but otherwise we'll get back to like we'll get a good result from it, something that's like a larger amount, just so we can see like we need to have the micro benchmarks that happen. These things that like to learn, okay, what's one host look like with this running? Because we can tell a lot from there, and that's a lot cheaper and easier to run. And then this is for the like, hey, this is bigger, we want to check. And Bailey brought up the last point in chat, like we need like stable, completely isolated infrastructure that's outside of the build pipeline that's basically dedicated for this test, so you can have that good benchmark value. No matter how you run these, that's one of always the problems of benchmarks that is difficult. You have to make sure it's in a clean environment, that nothing else is affecting it. So all those things are going to be done here with running it inside Kubernetes to spin up essentially just a wasmCloud lattice running inside of there. I'm sure as we evolve and the project evolves, we have different architectures and things that people are doing, we can start adding additional things, but we've got to start somewhere. So this is that somewhere.
Cool. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. Justin had a question. It's tangential but related, so I wanted to save it for after in case there's any other questions related to this, because I can answer that. And it's totally fine to ask here, Justin. I was just making sure there were no other questions related to this before I moved on. Okay, so there's that. For those who might not be in the Zoom meeting or on YouTube or something, Justin asked, is wasmCloud still making good use of Cilium on the networking side, or did you put everything behind NATs? So that's actually something over at Cosmonic for some of our network isolation and things. We use Cilium internally for that, wrapping over the top of like of wasmCloud running. Cilium has actually never been used directly inside of wasmCloud. Everything is still NATs especially for the control plane layer. We've obviously started adding other additions and things, like there's certain core things like HTTP server that can be run as basically a plugin via like a provider, or it can be run as a built-in. That's an experimental feature we have. And then there's stuff that like Colin's been working on about looking at like connecting other things in. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on there, and we don't need to like deep dive into it, but just so people know, like that's at. So there's multiple options here, and we're trying to, as we evolve, now that we've gotten to a point when we have stability, people are starting to use wasmCloud and real things. We're starting to address those use cases from everybody to like say, okay, what's the next thing can make sure this is as pluggable and extendable as possible for people to do. Back to you, Brooks.
Alrighty, awesome. Thank you, Taylor, for coming on and talking about it. Let me know as soon as, you know, well, everybody should feel free to just kind of throw demos and things on the community agenda. They're always welcome. Okay, I think we're good on demos for today, but we do have a couple discussions. So a couple things to talk about, should be fun. The first one is that WASH 0.38 is now released. So if you all are interested, feel free to take a look at the release notes there. We also released the new version of wasmCloud in 1.5, but I think we talked about that already. I think WASH is generally like the delivery mechanism that most people get the latest and greatest things. So this was great. A little bit long coming to get from WASH 0.37 to 0.38, but we've got a bunch of fixes in here for WASH dev, fetching wit with whackage, smaller things like colorizing text, and there was a PR that output version information as JSON, like wash dash dash version dash o JSON, all that fun stuff. I'll just speak terminal commands to everybody until you understand what I'm saying is great. Notable new features that have come in over the last month or so is one is extended registry overrides, which is huge for overriding the WIT dependencies where you pull them from. So this is kind of a new format in the wasmCloud.toml, which allows you basically to really easily specify where you want to pull WebAssembly dependency or like WIT dependencies from. So for wasmCloud bus, you can pull them from a custom GitHub repo. For this interface, you could pull it from a file which you have locally on disk. For this interface, you could pull it over HTTP from like a zipped up tar-gz, which is kind of how like WIT deps worked before. This should prove really a whole lot nicer for folks who are either operating wasmCloud and like the developer tooling behind proxies or registry like pull through cache registries. So if you need to point instead of at GitHub or like GHCR, you need to point at like an Amazon registry or like an Artifactory registry and pull through there. This should be a whole lot easier because this takes effect during the build time. You can also do it with kind of this expanded TOML format, but this is all nicely documented on our site. Thank you so much. I think Victor did this. Thank you, Victor. I know that Victor implemented it, but I think Victor also did the documentation. So thank you, Victor, for all the things. And if it wasn't you, then you can pass the taco on to somebody else because this is awesome. Other things coming in, there is now support for interface wildcard overrides in the wasmCloud.toml, and those are a lot of words. But basically, in the wasmCloud.toml, we have support for when you run wash dev. If you wanted to use a custom interface or a custom implementation of a provider that wasn't our built-ins, like the file system or NATs, you can now specify, and this is a link to a PR, which we're working on and all that fun stuff, but you can now specify an overridden capability provider, say for your imports, anytime you call a function for a WASI key value with the version 020 draft, whether it's atomics or store or batch, we're actually going to send all those invocations to the provider that is found here. So like Redis instead of NATs. You can also pass configuration. And the PR that you're looking at here is essentially integration of this into our wasmCloud Quick Start. So this should really help streamline some of the initial development process and kind of overriding some of those dependencies when Wash is able to generate the application, like the declarative application for you. So this should make that experience a whole lot nicer. What we'll make sure to do is include how to make this work for custom interfaces as well. But that will essentially allow another level of customization to the Wash dev process. Liam, question?
Hi, Brooks. How are you?
Hey,
Good.
I'm good.
Yeah. I have a question about this. We've talked a long time about, in a world where I just take a standard component and I just give it to wasmCloud and it just runs. Is this a step in that direction? What's your thinking there as you've sort of like you collect all this experience across the whole ecosystem and you talk to you talk to all these people. What are you thinking there on like what direction is this headed? Is it more declarative or less, or optionally both, depending on which path you take?
More and or less declarative. Yeah, I really the thing that I love about WashDev is what it does is as a developer, you just write code. WashDev builds the component and then we'll inspect the component for all of its runtime dependencies. You can think of that, we talk about them as capabilities. So if you need HTTP, if you need a key value store, if you need a blob store, these are all capabilities that wasmCloud understands. So like we know how we have implementations of these capabilities and we know how to create a declarative manifest for you. If you use a custom interface in your component, so one that you've created or maybe one that's not a WebAssembly standard, so we don't know about it, then essentially our best guess is, hey, this is a custom interface. So we'll put a placeholder in your declarative manifest and then you have to go fill that out. What this feature does is lets you, because you know of the custom interfaces, like the developer know the custom interfaces you're using, you can give Wash Dev the information that it needs to build that full declarative manifest for you. So this is going to be really, really useful for as soon as you get past the initial development process or when you step outside the bounds of just using WASI interfaces, you can still take advantage of the same hot reload loop declarative development process, but just give Wash or the wasmCloud tooling enough information to manage that for you. That's kind of what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
Do you think that you would have the ability to override default capabilities? Like if you wanted to use a different KV or something along those lines?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what we'll do during the quick start. We'll basically override the Nats key value store. Sorry, Masood, everybody loves it. We'll override the Nats key value store with Redis to show an example of you essentially overriding the default implementation, the one that's we use, and connect to a Redis key value store, which you may be more used to interacting with, like with your developer flow.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, great questions, Liam.
Not planned.
Not planned. Real question.
Actually, not a plan. I just, I think that people laugh because we work together and, we obviously talk all the time. But, like I know that we've talked about that and I genuinely am curious. So I wait and ask the question now, for a bunch of reasons. One, I want to share your response with the community. But two, I want to hear everyone else's reaction to it. Like this is really material. And I think that, ultimately this is a direction that we've been excited to go to for a long time. You think about having to declare everything, years ago, and now we're to the point where just give me your component and I'll do everything I can to get it going is the first great developer experience. But we have two customers here on the table. We also have platform engineers. So for the platform engineers, they also want to be able to write that output and then git commit that to a repo so they have historically what capabilities were being used at any given time. So we really have those two different experiences to kind of offer here. And I love the direction that we're headed in, which is, enables, I think, both workflows. When we don't have any information, we do as much as we can to make the experience feel magic and just work, TM. And we still empower those users that have a reason to or a desire to be incredibly declarative and operate with specific implementation, the ability to do so. And I think that you and the whole team, and I mean everybody, including all the new leaders in the community, thank you, are doing a really great job making that experience a reality. So I thank you all. I think this is really cool. I can build stuff in wasmCloud, which, like, I think that's like, pretty low bar here, a low bar of functionality, or high bar of functionality, whichever way you want to talk about, like a naive user, Liam, getting it done. So great job.
Yeah. Great work, everybody. What were we talking about? Yes, release notes. Okay. Let's just keep cranking here. So, that was one of the big features number 2. Big feature number 3, which is awesome, and I actually got to use it for the first time today, is when there's a new patch version of Wadum or wasmCloud. When you run washup, this will actually go and download the latest patch version. We have our own rigor and needing to adhere to Simber and everything, which we already do, which is great. But essentially, a big problem before is you would have to go. We would have to do a whole new wash release for like patching the smallest wasmCloud thing just to update the version that's included. And this really helps with getting us to be able to roll out new versions to people who are running wasmCloud locally. So when you run washup, it actually goes and checks GitHub, which can fail, and it's not really worried about it. But I just wanted to, it would just use the one that it currently has on disk. But I wanted to thank Mark especially for putting in the work for this feature, because it is awesome. And thank you all the contributors who put in things related to Wash over the last since the last release. So thank you all. This is awesome. Let's keep it going. I mean, it's great. So you all may notice that the first time you run washup, we're probably going to download another version of probably wasmCloud 1.5.1, since that's the newest one, and go on from there. And there's a full kind of change log here below with a couple of other things. I don't mean to leave out any great features or fixes, but I'm just trying to kind of pull the ones that you're most likely to interact with above the fold. So speaking of Wash, I did want to mention that, and we're moving on to the roadmap next, which is great, but there is one thing in particular on the maintainer side. We did have a maintainer, Ahmed, who I don't think is on the call, but Ahmed, thank you so much for kind of stepping up and expressing interest in this one to consolidate Wash CLI and Wash lib. Still want to make sure that we talk some of this over, and get kind of a relative timeline for this one. So to set the stage for this issue, we have a crate for the Wash binary and a crate for the Wash library, which our whole goal was to keep it easy to kind of import the library functions and reuse that within your own Rust application. But I think we kind of started this project a little while ago, and we've gotten more advanced in our Rust usage. We know how to do this from the perspective of a single crate. And one thing that commonly happens is when you contribute a new feature to Wash, you'll add it to the library and then add the usage of it to the binary. And then that is what like ultimately gets released to people. And that's just an extra step that we don't really need. Releasing the library and then releasing the binary just to get the new version out. I think it would be great or the proposal is to combine this just into the Wash crate, which, thank you so much to the original owner of Wash who registered this quite a while ago. they actually transferred it over to us, so we own the wash crate now. Yay! This is something that has been out for quite a long time, but we can now use the just straight up wash crate, which is awesome. You can run like cargo install wash. So of course, doing something like this is quite a big refactor. Combining two crates together. I think we could do it really quickly in like a medium like to low effort way, but then it would just kind of be a weird jumbled release. So we want to work through this one. I just wanted to let you all know, for folks who are considering taking on some of the bigger issues that we have around wash CLI and wash lib, you may want to run it by the maintainer team, or just leave a comment on the GitHub issue. May want to run it by the person who filed the issue, or the maintainers, just to make sure it's not anything too big. Because while we're migrating, we're actually going to create a separate wash crate. We're going to deprecate wash CLI and wash lib, and I don't want like a really big feature or really big refactor to go in after we've started that and then need to basically port all of that over. It just sounds like a lot of work, and I think it would be best if this didn't drag on for too long. So that is really all just to say this hasn't started yet. So if you're working on a PR that's updating something in wash or wash lib, you shouldn't have to worry. Just I guess put that PR up, or let us know. But we're going to be starting on this, and we will be for a short time period, at least one overlapping version will release the feature in both crates, just to do a quick transition. I don't honestly see this affecting too many folks. I think anyone who's embedding wash with wash lib we'll want to make the migration, but we'll try to do our best to keep the API similar, because we don't need to change any functionality. We're just straight up. I mean, the first bit will probably just be straight up merging two crates and then deduping some of the yeah, we'll just smoosh. We're smooshing crates. We're whacking the crates together, and it should just result in smoother releases for us, easier parsing of the repo for you. Yay. Do folks have any questions either on the wash release or the combination of the wash crates? Yeah, Masood, you pointed out in the Zoom chat that you're working through some things like writing workflows and everything. And you have wash CLI everywhere. So this, I mean, switching over for a new release would certainly require an update on your side. Do you have any concerns there? Anything that we can kind of do to make that easier?
Sorry, Brooks. I mean, I'm working through, the provenance things
Mhm.
in wasmCloud workflows. And that's where I'm saying that it's being referenced in a lot of places. So as part of the cleanup, there will be a need to also clean up the jobs.
Okay. No, that's a great call out. So you're saying, I mean, kind of calling attention to the fact, like on our side, we have wash CLI in a bunch of places.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for pointing that out. This work doesn't just to make sure that this work isn't like the provenance pieces. Is any part of that happening in wash CLI or wash lib?
No, all of that, this first phase, all of it is just in the workflows, right?
Okay.
And I'm
Okay.
going to stand up a demo, not a community demo, but a demo site, so you can see the outcome of the actions, so understand what's going to happen once we commit the changes.
Awesome. Okay. That's awesome. Thank you. Feel free to upgrade that to a community side demo when you get it ready. Yeah, as Bailey said. Okay, great. Well, of course, we're going to keep you all updated. If we, once we start working on the crate merge, I will make sure to bring it up in the community call to be like, hey, really officially just hold off for a week while we do the migration, but you all shouldn't have anything too big to worry about. I think a lot of the features on the roadmap, which look at that time, it's time for the roadmap check-in, are on the kind of the wasmCloud side, the protocol side, things like that. Okay. Why does Zoom say I have 25 arc windows open? Great. Yeah. So last thing on the agenda, just wanted to do a roadmap check-in. I think we might have been doing these every week since we created the roadmap. We probably don't need to do them every week, but there has been some movement in the last couple of days, which is great. As mentioned, the Helm chart for benchmarking wasmCloud is complete. So great job, Taylor. We've got a couple more things in progress now. Roman has been doing a lot of awesome work on the GitHub Actions and Nix side to rework the way that we build providers in our workspace and rework the way that we build binaries using our Nix Blake. So essentially the output of all of this is a faster CI, because we're only building what needs to be built at the time. And this is going to end up making releases and things quicker. For anybody using Nix locally, you will have an easier time like building an individual binary, which is kind of cool. It's actually not that bad. You can just like copy what we have in the CI. But that I assume that this actually will even enhance it if you're just using cargo. Like you can do a cargo build, no default features, features wasmCloud, and that just builds wasmCloud, not the other things, not the providers in the workspace. I marked consolidating wascli and washlib as something that's in progress to kind of help socialize for folks who may just be watching on the GitHub project. It sounds like, Masood, you've kind of started on the provenance and attestation bits. I was going to move this to in progress, but I wanted to ask before I did it.
Right. I created an issue and, linked it to this one because you said that we want to look at all of them, and I thought that I'm not going to touch it for now. However, I want to propose that once I, finish the issue, we close this, and then I open another RFC for something that I'm working on.
Okay. Yeah, sure. That sounds great. Let me push this one onto the roadmap then, and we can track that status there. We're working on it now. I could probably get rid of that one. It's a new feature and it's Q1. Yay. So let's see. Mister, do you think it would be best to keep this RFC on the roadmap or better to track like the individual pieces of work?
I think individual will be better
Okay.
because then this might linger on,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Well, I'll keep this whoops. I'll keep this on the roadmap forward because it's something that we're working on, but I'm going to remove it from the Q1 view so it just won't like show up here because it is something we're working on. I think it's probably worth a little effort thinking about how else we might want to use the wasmCloud roadmap just project. I'm totally using it as a way to plan quarters, but yeah. Okay. So now the phase 1 is in progress, and kind of the higher level RFC is still there, but just not on this board. Sweet. Okay. The rest of the things in here, as mentioned, there's a lot in the documentation and improvement side that relate to our protocols, defining our things like cloud events, the control interface, policy, those APIs in a language agnostic like IDL or even just like generating a JSON schema from it. These are things that we haven't started work on yet, but we have started spiking on what the possible solutions for that may be. One example that we do for wasmCloud right now is in Wadum. So the application format, we actually take the Rust struct, like what we actually parse, and generate a JSON schema from that. And then that's what you can use. I mean, you could even import it into your VS Code to give you like suggestions and type hints and everything, which is it's just super nice that, that's an option. But we really want to make sure to kind of propose some of those options. And it's probably best if we do the same thing everywhere. So we are working on that. I am leaving that in the triage section right now because it's not really in a place, still very much brainstorming. It's not really in a place for anybody to start working on it. But we do have, I didn't mean to stop sharing. We do have a good couple of ready for work options in the on the roadmap. So some of these are kind of assigned out, but especially these in the improvements tab are great first issues for people getting started with contributing to wasmCloud. So please feel free to take a look here for some of the things that we brainstormed here that are high effort, or sorry, high value, low effort, good first issue, medium effort. You'll be satisfied when you complete it, but it's not that hard. Okay, great. So that was it for the roadmap check-in. I like keeping tabs on it, seeing how we're doing. I know that we planned a lot of things on this roadmap. We're a little ambitious, but I believe in us. Do folks have any questions about the roadmap? Actually, it looks like we are running up on time, so I'll just kind of open it up generally. Is there anything people wanted to talk about from the like on the general Wasm Cloud side, broader WebAssembly ecosystem, your favorite sandwich, anything like that? Liam?
Hi, awkward Liam again. Maybe just one call to action might be that I would remind everybody in the community that anybody can demonstrate, at the top of the hour. I think, don't get me wrong, I love a good Brooks demo as much as anybody else, but I know that there are a lot of companies, a lot of, individual developers, a lot of tinkerers that are working on things. I think that we'd love it if you reach out to Brooks on wasmCloud Slack and see if you have anything that you want to share. Just call to action. It's a community and lots of folks are welcome to participate.
100%. All right, folks. Then I think that'll be it for today. Thank you everyone for coming to the community meeting. We don't have a special holiday next Wednesday or anything. I'm like afraid of it now. We've had so many holidays on Wednesdays lately. We are good. So I think we'll see you all in a week. And that's about it. Have a WasmCloud day, everyone.